Welcome to the Fibromyalgia Podcast. I'm Tami, fibromyalgia coach, author, and founder of the International Fibromyalgia Coaching Institute. The goal of this podcast is to empower you with access to the dream team of experts and coaches I've discovered are key to living the fibro life you love. From the comfort of your own home, and maybe even your pajamas, I'll help you take back control of your life and health. To help out with fibro fog, I always include full show notes and additional resources at fibromyalgiapodcast.com. Welcome to the Fibromyalgia Podcast. I'm your coach, Tami Stacklehouse, and this is episode 78. In today's episode, I'm actually going to walk you through an assignment that I give my students in my Certified Fibromyalgia Advisor training program. So you're going to get a little peek behind the curtain, but I thought it would be really valuable for you as well. We are going to create your flare survival kit. Now, this little exercise started off with a client of mine. Years and years ago, this was, probably even before I wrote my first book, I had a client who was having her tonsils removed. She wasn't a kid. She was probably in her 30s, and she knew that this was going to be a difficult time. I mean, for one thing, she has fibromyalgia, right? And getting your tonsils out is no picnic for anybody, much less when you have a pain condition that's going to amplify your pain, right? The other problem was that she knew with her tonsils out, she was not going to be able to communicate very well. She wasn't going to be able to tell her fiance what he could do to help her. So we worked for several weeks before her surgery to make sure that she had a kit put together that he knew what she needed, that she had a way of easily telling him what she needed. And what we developed turned into this assignment that I use now with my students and my clients. Now, on today's show notes, if you go to fibromyalgiapodcast.com/78, you'll be able to download the Flare Survival Kit worksheet. When you take a look at this worksheet, you'll see that it sort of repeats itself. There's a couple of pages at the beginning that have a question and list, a few lines that you can write on. And then the last two pages look more like a spreadsheet. My intention here is that you will use those first two pages to do some brainstorming. You could just use a blank piece of paper if you like. But then those last two pages are where you sort of consolidate everything so that people like her fiance, right? So the other people that live with you, roommates, husbands, kids, brothers, sisters, parents, so that they can look at that. Maybe you stick it on your fridge and they know ways to help you. Because here's the deal, right? We cannot remember what we actually need to do to help ourselves when we're in the middle of it all, right? I mean, that's the nature of pain and brain fog, right? You forget. So do this for you as well and stick it to your fridge so that when you're having those brain fog moments, when you're having lots of pain and fatigue and you're just not sure what to do to help yourself, you can even look at the chart that's stuck on the fridge and know some things that you can do to help yourself. Now, a lot of people, when they talk about a flare survival kit, they're usually talking about something physical, like a bag or a box that maybe they have their pain meds and some lotions and potions, pain creams, maybe ice packs, heating pads, and it's a physical thing that they put together. And that's a piece of this, but that's not all of it. Because when we manage our fibromyalgia, we need to think outside the box, literally outside of that physical box that you've put your pain meds in. We also need to think about everything else that helps us with our fibromyalgia. So what are some of those things? Well, that could be things like meditation, deep breathing, stepping outside and getting a breath of air, petting the cat, cuddling with your furry kids right there. That is part of how we manage our fibromyalgia, right? So don't just be limited in your thinking to putting together a physical kit. Now, don't be limited in not putting together a physical kit too, because that is very helpful. So when I was working with my client, the two things we did, one was put together this chart that went on the fridge that actually broke down when I have fibro pain, this is what helps. When I have brain fog, this is what helps. When I'm tired, this is what helps. When I'm extra emotional, this is what helps. So fill that out, have that. And then we also put together that box, right? So she actually, because she knew she wasn't going to be able to talk very well with her tonsils out, we put together boxes and labeled them. Like, here's the kit for treating physical pain. Here's the kit for, when I'm tired. Here's the tonsils box, right? So put together things and label them, not just for yourself, but for other people to be able to help you. This is such a great opportunity for those of you who have people around you who want to support you, who are asking you things like, how can I help? What can I do to help? And so often we're like, I don't know, there's nothing you can do. It just hurts too much. There's nothing. If you do this when you're in a clear moment, when you're in a moment where you're not super fatigued, where you're not in a high amount of pain, if you can think through this in a different moment than when you're right in the thick of it, you'll probably be able to think of things that they can do to help, right? Maybe they make an Epsom salt bath for you. Maybe they just make a bowl of hot water. You can, soak your feet in Epsom salts. Maybe they bring you your meds or your pain creams or hot pad, heating pad, ice pack, right? You can also have them do things like, when mom's in this much pain, we need to play quietly, or it's time to turn the lights down, or why don't you go to your bed and lie down for a little while and I'll take care of dinner. So there's lots and lots of things that don't fall inside that physical box of a flare survival kit that are actually part of how we survive a flare, right? So in this worksheet, what I want you to do is think about the main symptoms of fibromyalgia, and you'll see there's also a section for you to sort of fill in the blanks. So if you have other conditions that flare as well, like for me, one of the things on there is headaches, right? So if I have a migraine, if I have a headache, then there's a certain group of things that I will do. And I want you to first think through, what are your warning signs? Now, when you first start filling this out, your warning sign might be, I have a migraine, right? So I'm in pain. That's my warning sign. The longer you do this and the closer you pay attention, you can kind of back that up and get earlier and earlier and earlier warning signs. So for instance, I'll just use migraines as an example because I know a lot of you can relate to this. Okay, I have a migraine, but before I get the migraine, I typically just have a regular headache. And before that regular headache, maybe I notice my neck is feeling extra stiff. And before my neck feels stiff, maybe I notice that I'm holding my shoulders closer to my ears. I'm carrying my shoulders up, right? Maybe before that, I notice that I'm feeling irritable, right? Like we can just sort of keep backing that up and backing that up. A brain fog symptom for me that I've mentioned on the podcast before is that I will start spelling things funny. I spell them phonetically instead of the way they should be spelled. So if I was typing out phonetically and I was experiencing a lot of brain fog instead of the PH that it's supposed to be, I would type phonetically with an F, right? Because that's what it sounds like. And anytime I see that happening, I know, oh, my brain needs a break. My brain is getting overworked and I need to give it a chance to have a break. And I have recognized that as an early warning sign rather than waiting till I get to the point where I can't, figure out how to work a website or my computer or whatever it might be, right? It's just a little thing. I noticed it a lot while I was writing both of my books. When I started spelling things funny, it was time to take a break. But you will find your own warning signs like that. So, what are your warning signs when you're starting to get fatigued, when you're starting to run out of energy? Maybe you start walking more slowly, or you drag your feet a little bit. Instead of picking your feet up while you walk, you're sort of shuffling along. Maybe when you're getting fatigued and your energy is running out and the brain fog is coming on, maybe you start being more sensitive to lights or sounds or smells because your senses are being overwhelmed. Before you end up in a big old fibro flare, right? A pain flare, maybe you start noticing certain parts of your body hurt, right? So I have a client who has bad feet. And one of the things that we always have to keep an eye on is keeping her feet happy, because she knows if her feet start to hurt, that can turn into a fibro flare. I have another client, same thing, but it's her neck. She's got to keep her neck happy. And if her neck stays happy, then she can avoid her fibro flares. But if she doesn't, then that's a quick way for her to end up with pain everywhere. Just do some brainstorming. You don't necessarily have to figure out the answers in this first step, but just brainstorm. What are your warning signs? One of the things I've noticed with my blood sugar levels is I will sneeze if I need to eat. Whatever reason, I do not know. But, if my blood sugar starts dropping, I will sneeze. So whatever quirky little things like that, make a note of them. This is also a really great exercise for you to do with other people who love you. This could be your coach, your husband, kids, anything like that. You might just ask them, hey, before I end up in a fibro flare, what do you notice? They're going to notice things for sure, 100%. There are things that they notice about you that you don't even know that you're doing. For one thing, you're probably getting grouchy. So that might be their warning sign. Oh, everybody look out. Mom's about to have a fibro flare. She's a little cranky. But there's probably other things as well, like the way that you hold your body. You might put your hand on your neck and sort of hold your neck before you end up with a headache, is something I noticed my old boss used to do years ago. Whenever we saw her walking around holding her neck, we knew, there is a headache coming on, right? So ask them, sit down and brainstorm with them and say, hey, what do you notice that I do? And just brainstorm all those warning signs. This is an exercise that you will do repeatedly so that you can get earlier and earlier and earlier warning signs, right? Like the first time you do this, it might be hey, I have a migraine, that's my warning sign. But 6 months later, after you've been paying attention and you do it again, you might notice new things. So do this now. Make your best guess, write down everything you can think of now, but then come back and revisit this again. Once you've done your brainstorming and you have your list of warning signs, I want you to separately do a second brainstorm of what are the things that help you, right? So, okay, I can take my pain meds. I can take tramadol. I can take ibuprofen. If I have a migraine, I have Fioricet I can take, or my Nurtec I can take. Maybe you write down all the different pain creams that you use. Maybe there are certain supplements that you take. If you're getting anxious, maybe you use some Gabacalm, right? There are lots of different things that you do. But remember, we are not just looking at a physical kit. We're looking at that bigger definition of what a flare survival kit is and all the tools that you have at your disposal for managing your symptoms. So that's going to be things like turning off the lights and laying down for a few minutes. That's going to be going outside, going for a walk, meditation, deep breathing, playing a game, tuning out and watching TV for a minute, or whatever it might be. Write all of those things down as well. And the first time that you brainstorm these things that help your fibromyalgia, I don't want you to necessarily try to put them together with your warning signs just yet. We will eventually do that. But first, I want you to just think of everything that helps you feel better. Does playing music help you feel better? Does certain music help you feel better, right? And then also think about which situations do those things help you the most. So again, going back to my headaches, because I think it's a good example that everybody can relate to, there are certain things that I do for my migraines that work better or worse depending on the circumstance. So, for example, if I have a full-blown migraine, nausea, light sensitive, like the whole 9 yards, if it is just a really bad one, I can skip trying Advil because I know that's not going to help at that stage, right? I need something more. At the same time, if I have just a little bit of a headache, maybe it's a little bit of a sinus pressure headache, I don't need to go straight to the migraine meds, right? And so really being able to discern which things are appropriate in which situation really makes it more effective for you, makes you more powerful in treating your symptoms. So play around a little bit. I have probably a dozen different types of pain creams that I'll use. Some of them work better on certain kinds of pain and others work better for other things, right? I'll use my magnesium lotion if my neck hurts because the muscles are tight, but I might use something completely different if it's not that, right? So play around and see if you can start noticing what helps the most when, and make a note of it. That's the big thing here, is to make a note of it. You will not remember. Not just because you have fibro fog. I mean, that's going to make it even worse. But when we're in the middle of those things, when we're in the middle of those situations, we don't remember later what happened. Our brains are not wired to do that, right? So make a note of it. Now, you've got your list of all the warning signs and you've got your list of all the different things that help. Start trying to match those up a little bit. I think it's really helpful to sort of think of these things in groups, like you'll see on the worksheet there. You'll see certain things to do for pain, for fatigue, for brain fog, for emotions. Separate out, headaches if you have them, or arthritis, or whatever other conditions you might have. Separate those out as well, because they might require something different, right? Fibro pain, arthritis pain might need different types of meds, and probably do. So start matching them up, taking that information, and filling out those last 2 pages of that flare survival kit. These are the pages that will go on your fridge or carry along with you in your purse. Make a cheat sheet. And the better you get at this, the more you pay attention, the more specific you can be, and the more control you will have over your symptoms. At first, it'll feel like a free-for-all. I'll just be honest with you. At first, you'll be like, I don't know. I have a migraine, and then what do I do? Or I'm in fibro pain. Now what do I do? But the more you do this, the more you talk with people, talk through this with people, your family, friends, your coach, the better and more clear this will be. Now, of course, I'm speaking to you after, being diagnosed 15 years ago. So I've had a lot of practice at this, and maybe you've never even thought about this. So of course you're going to be at a different level. Don't let that stop you. And don't let that stop you from trying to get better at it and get more specific. If you are feeling totally lost as I talk about this, or if you're feeling totally overwhelmed by all of this, that is a perfect opportunity to reach out and work with a coach. This is one of the things that we help all of our clients with, is building that toolbox of things they can use to manage their pain, their fatigue, their brain fog. And the more tools you have to manage, the better you do and the better you'll feel and the more you can live the life that you want to live. Now, I mentioned this was part of our Certified Fibromyalgia Advisor training program. This is one of the assignments that I give. And if this was helpful for you, or if you're thinking, this is helpful, but I still need more help, right? I need somebody to talk through all of this with, or I need somebody to actually hold me accountable to actually fill out this form, then you might want to consider taking our class. Our next one starts on March 22nd. And as of recording this, I do still have a couple of spots left. So just go to today's show notes, fibromyalgiapodcast.com/78, and we'll have the information where you can learn more about that training program. If our training program has already started by the time you're hearing this, you can always work through this with one of our coaches. And again, we will have the link where you can schedule a consultation on today's show notes, fibromyalgiapodcast.com/78. Now, I want to wrap up today's episode with a listener shout out for you. This was an email I received from Anne. She said, I enjoy listening to your podcast. It is such a breath of fresh air for me. For a change, you are teaching on how to deal with struggles that fibromyalgia cause instead of masking the problems. Yesterday, I listened to episode 4. I could relate to all of it. It was like you were speaking only to me. I was so enlightened by the information and examples you mentioned that I had my husband listen to it last night for an exact reason why I feel the way I do. For the first time in all these years, he now has a definite understanding on how I feel and why. Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Anne. And I'm so glad you shared that. You know, sharing an episode of this podcast with the people who are trying to understand you is a great way to go about it. Episode 4, which is the one she shared with her husband, is really a sort of a history and an overview of what fibromyalgia is, the research behind it, and just a little bit of general information. So it's a what is fibromyalgia episode. It's a great one for sharing with people, especially if you're newly diagnosed or you have new people in your life that want to understand and need sort of a crash course on what fibromyalgia is. Another good episode is episode 3, which is where I share my story, and episode 5, where I interview Dr. Ginevra Lipton on her perspective of what fibromyalgia is as a fibromyalgia provider, as a doctor who specializes in fibromyalgia and as a fibromyalgia patient herself. So those are all good ones to listen to. I also thought this is a great listener shout out to share because this episode is exactly what she's talking about. This is a very practical thing you can do, building your flare survival kit to help you deal with those struggles that fibromyalgia causes in your life. It's not just about positive thinking or wishing that it would go away. No, we are all about practical things that you can do on your own with your providers to actually help you feel better. And that wraps up another episode of the Fibromyalgia Podcast. I'm your coach, Tami Stackelhaus. For daily doses of hope, inspiration, and practical advice, come hang out with me on Facebook. Visit facebook.com/fibrocoach to find my personal coaching page and connect with me directly. To find the show notes, additional resources, or to schedule a consultation with me or one of my coaches, visit fibromyalgiapodcast.com.